Hey everyone, tonight we're going to plunge into the blistering, chaotic world of the Crusades, where faith, mud, and questionable decisions collide under a burning sun. Picture yourself standing in a dusty village square, a wooden cross in one hand, a dull kitchen knife in the other, and a sermon ringing in your ears about salvation and Jerusalem. You probably won't survive this, not because of enemy swords, but because your boots are already giving up and Gerald's eating berries that might be poisonous. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. It's wild to see who's joining us from across the globe. Now, turn down the lights. Maybe turn on the fan for some soft background music. And let's get started tonight. You're standing in the middle of your village, the air thick with dust and the smell of barley, when a man in robes climbs onto a wooden crate and starts shouting. His voice cracks like a whip, all fire and brimstone, preaching about Jerusalem, salvation, and how your sins, yes, yours, are piling up faster than manure behind the millhouse. You shift uncomfortably, remembering that thing you did last spring with the miller's daughter. Nobody saw, but apparently God's got a ledger, and it's detailed. The Pope himself, this robed guy claims, has promised full forgiveness to anyone who joins the crusade. Eternal glory, a clean slate, maybe even some gold if you squint hard enough at the horizon. It sounds better than plowing the same muddy field for another decade, eating onion soup that tastes like regret. You're bored. Your life's a cycle of goats and rain. So when the tavern talk turns to holy oaths over mugs of watery ale, you're in. 3 drinks later, you're swearing to God, holding a wooden cross, and wait. Whose boots are these? Morning comes, and you're a crusader now. Or so they tell you. A priest slaps a blessing on your forehead, hands you a scrap of cloth with a red cross sewn on, and calls it a surcoat. You're expecting shining armor, a noble steed, maybe a map. Instead, you get a kitchen knife, a frying pan you stole from your mother, and a vague direction, east. Your neighbor Gerald, who's already shirtless for reasons nobody questions, brought a rake and a glare that could curdle milk. His wooden shield reads, "Jesus, watch this," in what you hope is bad Latin. You've got no training, no idea where Jerusalem is, and your armor is a wool tunic that itches like it's plotting revenge. Your family waves goodbye, asking if God's covering your meals. You laugh, but it's a hollow sound, because you're already wondering what you've signed up for. The crusade, it turns out, is less a holy march and more a traveling disaster with crosses. Historians still debate whether the Pope's call was a unifying stroke of genius or a recipe for chaos, but you're too busy tripping over a rock to care. The crowd around you buzzes like a kicked hive, peasants, bakers, a guy with a donkey that looks more prepared than you. Someone's singing a hymn, someone else is coughing like they've swallowed a plague. You clutch your cross, your knife, your frying pan, and tell yourself, this is for glory. It's not. It's for survival, and you're already behind. The sun's barely up, and your feet are staging a rebellion. Your turned shoes' soft leather scraps that pass for boots are already soggy, and you've got a blister preaching its own sermon. Gerald offers you a swig of something he calls holy water. It smells like despair and burns going down. You take a sip anyway, because what's a little bad judgment in the grand scheme of things? The trumpet sounds, or maybe it's just a guy yelling, "Move." Either way, you're off, shuffling into history with 1,000 other fools, your heart pounding with faith, and your stomach growling for lunch. The odd detail nobody mentions in the epic tales. Some crusaders carried relics for luck bits of bone, cloth, or wood they swore were holy. Yours is a splinter from a tavern bench the priest swore was touched by a saint. You're not sure if it's divine or just stuck in your bag, but you keep it anyway, because hope's a heavy thing to lose. You glance at Gerald, who's now arguing with a donkey about theology, and wonder if you're the only sane one here. Spoiler, you're not. The road stretches ahead, muddy and endless, and you're already dreaming of dry socks and a world where east comes with a map. For now, you march, one foot in front of the other, toward a city you can't pronounce, fueled by a sermon, a splinter, and the sinking feeling this might not end well. Hey, at least you've got that frying pan, might come in handy when Gerald inevitably starts a brawl over the last onion. You're standing in your village square again, but now it's time to pack for the crusade, and the reality of your situation is sinking in faster than your boots in last week's mud. The priest promised glory, but nobody mentioned gear, so you're scavenging your hut for anything that might pass as war-worthy. Your armor is a hand-me-down chainmail shirt from your cousin, who swore it was battle-tested but smells like it fought a losing war with a pigsty. It's heavy, not noble knight heavy, but like you're carrying a grumpy anvil on your shoulders. You try it on, and it sags, rusted rings digging into your neck like they've got a personal vendetta. Your helmet? A dented, conical thing that wobbles and feels like it's cooking your brain. No greaves, no gauntlets, just wool wrappings for your legs that make you look like a poorly bandaged scarecrow. Your turn shoes, those flimsy leather slippers, are already plotting their escape from your feet. Weapons? You've got that kitchen knife, sharpened on a rock until it's more dull than your uncle's stories. The frying pan's still in your bag, part weapon, part cookware, all optimism. Gerald, meanwhile, has upgraded his rake to a pitchfork he borrowed from a barn, and he's carved another inspirational phrase into his shield. God's got my back. You're not sure if it's faith or a cry for help. The canonical event here is the chaotic mustering of the First Crusade in 1096, when thousands of untrained peasants like you answered Pope Urban II's call at Clermont, grabbing whatever they could carry and marching off with zero preparation. Historians still debate whether this was a genuine outpouring of faith or a social pressure cooker exploding into bad decisions, but you're too busy trying not to drop your pan to care. An odd detail sticks out. Some crusaders tied bells to their belts, thinking the jingle would ward off evil spirits, or maybe just make them sound festive. You've got one, a tiny brass thing that clinks annoyingly with every step, like a goat mocking your life choices. You're supposed to be a soldier of God, but you look like a peddler who wandered into the wrong story. The surcoat with its red cross is your only badge of purpose, though it's already stained with mud, and what you hope is just stew. Your pack holds 2 onions, a crust of bread harder than your helmet, and that questionable splinter relic, which you're starting to think is just a piece of kindling. Gerald's got a sack of dried peas and a wineskin he guards like it's the Holy Grail. You ask what's in it, he winks and says, salvation. It smells like vinegar and regret. The march hasn't even started, and you're already questioning everything. The village is buzzing, wives crying, kids clinging, dogs barking like they know you're doomed. A noble rides by on an actual horse, his armor gleaming, and shouts something about divine purpose. You nod, but you're distracted by the blister forming where your shoe meets your sole. You glance at Gerald, who's practicing a battle stance that looks like he's fighting an invisible chicken. Ready for glory? He asks, grinning. You mumble something about needing a sharper knife. A trumpet blares, or maybe it's that guy yelling again, and the crowd lurches forward. You sling your pack, adjust your bell, and shuffle into the dust. East, they said. Just keep going east. You're not sure what's worse, the weight of your gear or the sinking feeling that nobody packed a map. At least the bell's jingling keeps the spirits away, though it's doing nothing for your sanity. You're moving now, or at least you think you are, shuffling along a muddy track that passes for a road, your chainmail clanking like a bag of angry spoons. The Crusade's in full swing, but it's less a triumphant march and more a groaning, sweaty stumble across Europe. Your shoulders ache under the weight of that rusted iron sweater, and your turn shoes are so soaked they squelch with every step, like you're walking on sad, wet bread. The canonical event here is the grueling march of the People's Crusade in 1096, when thousands of poorly equipped peasants like you set out for the Holy Land, only to discover that enthusiasm doesn't fill bellies or fix boots. Historians still debate whether this ragtag mob was driven by blind faith or just desperate for anything better than their dirt-floored lives. But you're too busy dodging donkey droppings to philosophize. The column stretches ahead, a chaotic snake of carts, goats, and people who look as confused as you feel. Gerald's up front, shirtless again, his pitchfork gleaming like he polished it with holy water, or maybe just spit. Someone singing a hymn, but it's drowned out by coughing and the creak of a cartwheel that's definitely planning its retirement. Your bell jingles mockingly, and you're starting to think the evil spirits it's supposed to repel are just laughing at you. An odd detail? Some crusaders painted their shields with crosses so big they flaked off in the rain, leaving them looking like they're fighting for a blurry cause. Your own surcoat's cross is smudged, less a symbol of faith and more a testament to your inability to avoid mud puddles. The sun's beating down, turning your helmet into a personal oven. You're sweating in places you didn't know existed, and your thighs are chafing like they've got a personal grudge. The noble who shouted, "Forward, men!" this morning is long gone, probably sipping wine in a castle while you trip over a rock and curse in a way that might undo your papal forgiveness. Your pack feels heavier, the onions inside rolling around like they're trying to escape. Gerald ate his entire week's rations by noon and is now eyeing your biscuit like it's a sacred relic. You clutch it tighter, because that biscuit's the only thing standing between you and spiritual despair. Someone sneezes behind you, and you flinch. Disease is already whispering through the ranks, and you're not sure if it's the devil or just bad hygiene. The road's a mess, churned into a soup of mud and regret by thousands of feet. A guy with a pitchfork tied to a broomstick, calling it God's toothpick trips and faceplants. And you stifle a laugh because your own dignity's hanging by a thread. Villages loom in the distance, but they're not welcoming. Gates are barred, wells are guarded, and one kid pelts you with a turnip so accurate it could have been divinely guided. You're only a few days in, and already the crusade feels like a cosmic prank. East, they keep saying, but the only thing you're heading toward is a blister the size of Jerusalem and a growing suspicion that Gerald's pitchfork is going to cause more trouble than the enemy. You adjust your helmet, wipe the sweat from your brow, and keep marching, because turning back means admitting you believed a sermon over common sense. You're still trudging along, the road a churned-up mess of mud and broken dreams, and your stomach singing louder than the hymns at last night's campfire. It's day 4, or maybe 5 you've lost track, because time feels like it's mocking you as much as Gerald's pitchfork. Hunger's no longer a feeling, it's a personality trait. The canonical event here is the catastrophic failure of logistics during the People's Crusade of 1096, when armies of zealous, but unprepared crusaders faced starvation before even reaching the Holy Land. Historians still debate whether the leaders' faith blinded them to the need for supply lines, or if they just assumed God would cater the trip. But you're too busy chewing a pebble to care. Your breakfast was a chunk of black bread, so dense it could double as a catapult stone. You gnaw it for 20 minutes, make no progress, and give up when your teeth start plotting a mutiny. Gerald claims his bread had a nail in it, which nobody finds surprising, since the supply cart looks like it was packed by someone who hates you all. Lunch? There is no lunch. You're rationing dried peas that taste like despair, rolled in dust. A guy nearby pulls a salted fish from his sock. Yes, his sock, and offers you a bite. You decline, partly because it smells like a sin, partly because you're considering fasting for spiritual clarity, like Brother Ulrich, who's suspiciously chewing in the dark. An odd detail sticks out. Some crusaders believed eating raw onions warded off demons. You've got 2 in your pack, but you're saving them for when you really need to fend off Gerald's life advice. The army's supply line is a myth, like dragons or clean socks. Food's either moldy, missing, or hoarded by nobles who claim they're praying over it. Foraging's your only hope, but the bushes yield berries Gerald swears are fine. You eat one, spend an hour behind a tree, and decide Gerald's judgment is as reliable as his Latin. Dinner's a stew. Nobody can identify chewy bits floating in a broth that tastes like betrayal. Someone says it's rabbit. Someone else mutters, boot leather. You don't ask questions, just eat and pray it stays down. The sun's setting, and you're lying in wet grass next to a snoring stranger who sounds like he's gargling gravel. Your stomach's still preaching, your feet are soup, and you're dreaming of your mother's onion soup, not because it was good, but because it didn't fight back. A noble rides by, shouting about divine purpose, but you're too hungry to care. Gerald's now trying to trade his pitchfork for a chicken, and you're pretty sure he's going to start a riot. You clutch your splinter relic, hoping it's holy enough to conjure a loaf of bread. The road stretches on, and you're starting to wonder if Jerusalem's just a rumor. A guy nearby starts licking his sword, claiming it tastes like glory. You don't correct him, but you're pretty sure it's rust, and now he's coughing up something unholy. You shuffle forward, one starving step at a time, fueled by faith, fumes, and the faint hope that tomorrow's stew might have less mystery in it. You're still dragging your feet through the endless mud, the Crusades' noble glow fading faster than your turn shoes, which are now more whole than leather. The air around you is thick, not just with dust, but with a smell that's part sweat, part stew, and part something you're afraid to name. Hygiene, once a proud daily ritual, is now a distant memory, like clean socks or the concept of personal space. You haven't bathed in over a week, and neither has anyone else. Your army's turning into a walking cheese wheel, pungent enough to scare off demons without that jingly bell. The canonical event here is the collapse of sanitation during the Crusades, particularly in the People's Crusade of 1096, when thousands of unwashed pilgrims turned camps into breeding grounds for disease. Historians still debate whether the stench was a bigger threat than enemy arrows, but you're too busy scratching to weigh in. An odd detail? Some crusaders believed rubbing garlic on their skin kept away evil spirits and lice. You try it, smearing a clove from your pack across your neck, but all you get is a new nickname, Garlic the Glorious. The lice, meanwhile, throw a festival in your hair, naming their capital city after you. Your surcoat's a canvas of stains, mud, sweat, and something that might be Gerald's stew experiment gone wrong. Your boots are damp, possibly sentient, and definitely plotting revenge. Bathing's a fantasy. The last river you saw was colder than a bishop's sermon and already occupied by a guy crying into his undergarments. You nod respectfully and keep moving. Water's for drinking or pouring on wounds while screaming, not for washing. Soap? If someone claims to have soap, they're either lying or carving it from tallow and delusion. Night falls, and you're itching like it's your new profession. Everyone's scratching, creating a rhythmic symphony of misery. Scratch, shuffle, groan, repeat. Gerald's convinced his helmet's haunted by lice ghosts, but you're pretty sure it's just his unwashed scalp throwing a party. Privacy's gone, bodily functions happen behind bushes, under wagons, or wherever dignity finally surrenders. You've made eye contact with strangers during moments you'll never unsee. Then there's the guy nobody knows, always clean, armor gleaming, smelling like lavender. You hate him. Is he a saint or a hallucination? Either way, he's not sharing his secrets. You dream of soap, dry feet, and a breeze that doesn't smell like 30 men and a cursed stew. A cough ripples through the camp, and you flinch disease is coming, and it's got better aim than your army. You try to stay positive, but your chainmail's fused to your skin, and your splinter relic feels like it's mocking you. Gerald's now bartering his holy water for a comb, claiming it'll solve everything. You're not sure what's worse, the smell of the camp, or the fact that you're starting to get used to it. You shuffle forward, scratching, sniffing, and praying for a bath or at least a wind strong enough to blow away the guy 3 rows back who just coughed something apocalyptic. The Crusades holy, they said. Right now, it's just a war against your own armpits, and you're losing. You're still slogging through the muck, your chainmail clanking like a tired blacksmith's apology, and now there's a new enemy, the cough that's spreading faster than Gerald's bad ideas. It starts innocently a sniffle here, a wheeze there, but by day's end, half the camp's hacking like they're auditioning for a plague. Your throat's scratchy, your stomach's sending cryptic messages, and you're wondering if God's testing you or just forgot about this whole crusade thing. The canonical event here is the devastating spread of disease during the Crusades, particularly in the People's Crusade of 1096, when dysentery and typhus decimated armies before they even saw combat. Historians still debate whether poor sanitation or sheer overcrowding was the bigger killer, but you're too busy dodging sneezes to care. An odd detail? Some crusaders carried healing relics, like bits of cloth touched by a saint, believing they'd ward off illness. You've got your splinter relic, but it's doing nothing except poking holes in your pack. The camp's turned into an infirmary, or rather a field where hope goes to wheeze. Healers are just guys with herbs and enthusiasm, waving sage near your face like it's supposed to scare the fever away. One guy's bleeding a patient with a knife dirtier than your boots, claiming it'll balance the humors. Spoiler, it doesn't. Gerald's got a purple rash on his neck, insisting it's just heat, but you're already planning his eulogy. You try to keep your distance, but everyone's coughing, including you, and the air feels like it's plotting something sinister. Water's a problem too. You refill your flask from a stream, only to notice 3 horses upstream using it as a toilet. You drink anyway. Hydration, right? The priests call it a divine test. The barmaid who tagged along says it's because nobody washes their hands. She's ignored, but you're starting to think she's the only one making sense. Tents are now fever wards, smelling of sweat and despair. One guy's trying to cure his chills with a hot poker, and you suddenly feel much better. An odd detail sticks out. Some believed sneezing into their surcoats would trap the sickness. You try it, and now your cross looks like it's crying. Dinner's the usual mystery stew, but nobody's hungry, either from fear or because their organs are on strike. You lie in the damp grass, shivering, listening to the camp's symphony of coughs and groans. Gerald's muttering about divine cleansing, but his rash is glowing like a bad omen. You clutch your splinter relic, praying it's got enough holiness to fend off whatever's brewing in your lungs. The stars above are bright, but they feel far away, like they're watching someone else's story. You're not fighting infidels yet, just germs, bad water, and the sinking feeling that your biggest battle is staying alive long enough to see Jerusalem, or at least a clean stream. You're still trudging through the endless muck, your chainmail now a second skin of rust and regret, and the villages you pass aren't exactly rolling out the welcome mat. You were hoping for bread, maybe a kind word, but instead you get barred gates and glares that could curdle holy water. The locals see your ragtag army, thousands of unwashed crusaders, trampling crops, shouting in bad Latin, and smelling like a barn fire, and they're not impressed. You're not a holy mission to them. You're a walking disaster with crosses. The canonical event here is the hostile reception faced by the People's Crusade in 1096, as villages across Europe, wary of looting and chaos, shut their doors to crusaders. Historians still debate whether the locals' distrust was born of past raids or just common sense, but you're too busy dodging a well-aimed turnip to ponder it. An odd detail: some crusaders tried to barter with holy tokens, bits of wood or cloth blessed by priests, only to find villagers valued chickens over blessings. You wave your splinter relic at a farmer, hoping for a loaf, but he demands your frying pan instead. You decline, because that pan's the only thing keeping you sane. You try asking for water in the local tongue, but your accent's so bad you accidentally propose to a goat. The goat's not interested, and neither is the farmer, who's now brandishing a pitchfork scarier than Gerald's. The village gates stay shut, and you're left bartering your last onion for a sip from a well that tastes like it's been cursed. Gerald, meanwhile, tries to trade his holy water for a cabbage and nearly starts a riot. The sun's high, baking you in your helmet, and the road's a churned-up mess of mud and resentment. You pass a church, hoping for charity, but the priest makes the sign of the cross like he's warding off demons. You can't blame him, your surcoat's more stained than cross, and the army's collective stench could peel paint off a relic. Some villages charge outrageous prices for moldy bread or ale that doubles as varnish. One kid pelts you with a turnip so accurate you're convinced he's got divine aim. You're starting to feel less like a soldier of God and more like a broke pilgrim with boundary issues. Gerald's now arguing with a monk about whose saint is holier, and you're just praying for a village that doesn't hate you, or at least one with a working well. Night falls, and you camp outside another barred gate, the villagers' whispers carrying on the wind like a warning. You're hungry, itchy, and still coughing from whatever plague's been circling the camp. Your splinter relic feels heavier, like it's judging your life choices. You lie in the grass, listening to Gerald snore and the distant howl of a dog that probably smells better than you do. The Crusade's supposed to be about salvation, but right now, it's about surviving suspicious villagers and the growing fear that Jerusalem's farther away than your dignity. You're still shambling along a road that's more mud than path, your chainmail jingling like a sad tambourine, and the word east is starting to feel like a cruel joke. Nobody knows where you're going. Not you, not Gerald, not even the noble on the horse, who keeps waving a map that looks like it was drawn by a drunk monk. It's got 3 towns, a squiggly river, and what might be a dragon doodled in the corner. The canonical event here is the aimless wandering of the People's Crusade in 1096, when thousands of crusaders roamed Europe with no clear route to the Holy Land, often circling back to the same cursed stream. Historians still debate whether their leaders were genuinely lost or just leaning too hard on divine GPS. But you're too busy tripping over the same rock twice to care. An odd detail? Some crusaders swore they followed divine signs, like oddly shaped clouds or a suspiciously holy-looking goat. You spot a cloud that might resemble a cross, but Gerald insists it's a divine chicken, and now you're arguing theology with a man who thinks east is where the sun wakes up. Your commander's map is useless, pointing forward at every fork like it's a personality trait. A local guide, bribed with a wineskin, points east and vanishes before dawn. You cross a stream, then cross it again, and by the 3rd time, you're convinced it's mocking you. A monk insists it's a different stream, holier than the last. You're not buying it, but you're too tired to argue. The terrain's a nightmare: forests that claw at your surcoat, swamps that eat your shoes, mountains that make your knees beg for mercy. Your bell's still jingling, but it's less warding off spirits and more annoying everyone within earshot. Gerald, redder than a sunburned pig, claims he's following divine whispers, the winds whispering back. You're lost, idiot. You're hundreds of miles from home, surrounded by people who think geography's a type of prayer, and your splinter relic's starting to feel like a prank. A guy swears he knows the way from a dream. Another claims he read a scroll once. You're starting to suspect Jerusalem's just a rumor spread by priests with too much time on their hands. Night falls, and you collapse in a field, your boots sliding off like they've given up too. The stars are bright, but they're not pointing anywhere useful. Gerald's carving a new motto into his pitchfork: East or bust. You're pretty sure it's bust. You clutch your frying pan, dreaming of a road sign or a commander who's actually been to the Holy Land. For now, you shuffle on, fueled by faith, blisters, and the faint hope that tomorrow you won't pass that same stupid stream again. You're still stumbling through a landscape that feels like it's actively trying to kill you. Your chainmail, now a rusted cage that creaks with every step. The Crusade's been a slog of mud, hunger, and bad directions. But now you're facing your first real fight, and it's nothing like the tavern tales of heroic charges. It's chaos, screaming, dust, and a sinking feeling that nobody, including you, knows what they're doing. The canonical event here is the disastrous Battle of Civito in 1096, where the People's Crusade met a disciplined Seljuk force and got slaughtered, proving enthusiasm doesn't block arrows. Historians still debate whether overzealous faith or sheer incompetence led to the rout, but you're too busy ducking to care. Your helmet's slipped over one eye, your kitchen knife's duller than a monk's sermon, and your frying pan's your only real weapon. Gerald borrowed your shield to cook bacon and forgot to return it, so you're holding your splinter, relic like it might deflect a scimitar. An odd detail? Some crusaders shouted, "Deus Vult," so loudly they scared their own horses, sending half the cavalry into a panicked stampede. You yell it too, mostly because everyone else is, but it comes out more like a startled yelp. The enemy's fast, skilled, and terrifyingly coordinated. You lock eyes with one, a kid, maybe 15, who looks like he's been fighting since he could walk. You swing wildly, hit your own helmet, and scream. It's very brave. Arrows fly before anyone's ready, and the front line surges while the back line trips over itself. A guy with a pitchfork stabs his own foot and blames the devil. Gerald swinging his pitchfork like it's a holy flail, shouting about Jesus and bacon. Dust chokes the air. You can't tell friend from foe. A horn blares. Someone's singing a tavern song about sheep, and you're pretty sure it's not a battle tactic. You trip, fall, and consider playing dead tempting, but social pressure keeps you running toward the chaos. The fight ends as suddenly as it started, the enemy retreating, leaving you panting, bruised, and miraculously alive. Gerald's using your helmet as a soup bowl again, and you're bleeding from the ankle, though you don't remember how. You collapse in the dirt, the screams fading into a dull hum. Victory? Not really. You're just not dead, which is close enough in the Crusades. The sun sets, painting the sky like it's mocking your survival. You clutch your frying pan, wondering if glory's supposed to feel this much like a hangover. Gerald's already planning the next fight, but you're just praying for a bandage and a commander who knows which end of a sword to hold. You're still limping along, your ankle throbbing from that mystery wound, and the Holy Land's weather is proving to be a worse enemy than the Seljuks. 1 minute, the sun's roasting you inside your chainmail, turning it into a portable forge that sizzles your skin like Gerald's ill-fated bacon experiment. The next, the skies crack open with rain so vengeful, it feels like God's personally offended by your surcoat. Your boots squelch, your surcoat clings like a soggy shroud, and you're starting to think the desert's bipolar. The canonical event here is the brutal environmental toll on the First Crusade's march through Anatolia in 1097, where heat, drought, and sudden storms decimated Crusader morale and supplies. Historians still debate whether the climate or poor planning did more damage, but you're too busy scraping mud off your eyebrow with a twig to weigh in. An odd detail? Some Crusaders tied rags to their helmets, hoping to catch a breeze or at least look like they had a plan. You try it, but your rag just slaps you in the face like a wet insult. The heat's relentless, baking your leather turn shoes until they crack like overcooked bread. You're sweating so much, your splinter relic is probably drowning in your pack. Then the rain hits biblical, angry, thunder-roaring rain that turns the road into a mudslide. You slip twice, Gerald faceplants into a cow patty, and you don't laugh out loud, but your soul's cackling. Your tent collapses under the deluge, and you seek shelter under a tree, only to find it's already claimed by 3 soaked goats and a guy reciting psalms to his knees like they're his only friends. Night brings cold, the kind that makes your fingers forget they exist. Your sword's an ice sculpture. Your nose is running for Jerusalem faster than you are, and building a fire's a fantasy every stick's wetter than your morale. Gerald's shivering, his pitchfork now a makeshift tent pole, and he's muttering about divine trials. You're pretty sure the only trial here is surviving the atmosphere. You huddle in the mud, dreaming of dry socks and a sun that doesn't hate you. A guy nearby tries to warm his hands by rubbing his holy rag, and you're tempted to join him, if only to feel something other than damp despair. The Crusade's supposed to be about faith, but right now it's a war against the weather, and the weather's got better aim than your entire army. You clutch your frying pan, wondering if it could double as an umbrella. The stars are hidden behind clouds, and the only sound is the drip of water and Gerald's teeth chattering like a cursed castanet. You're not sure what's worse, the heat that cooked you, the rain that drowned you, or the growing fear that Jerusalem's just a mirage in this God-forsaken desert. You're still slogging through the mud, your chainmail a soggy cage of rust, and the Holy Land feels like a fever dream you're not sure you'll wake up from. Now, You're facing a new kind of trouble, your so-called allies. You thought the crusade was a united front Christians against infidels, simple as a sermon. But the Byzantines, your supposed partners, are eyeing you like you're a stray dog that wandered into their palace. They speak Greek, cross themselves differently, and lock their city gates faster than Gerald can lose his shirt. The canonical event here is the tense alliance during the First Crusade in 1097, when Latin crusaders clashed culturally and politically with their Byzantine hosts in Constantinople, nearly derailing the campaign before it reached Jerusalem. Historians still debate whether mistrust or theological differences caused more friction, but you're too busy dodging dirty looks to care. An odd detail? Some crusaders tried to bridge the gap by offering holy trinkets, like your splinter relic, only to be laughed at by Byzantine priests who thought Latin piety was just bad hygiene in disguise. You try to explain your mission to a local monk, but your broken Greek makes it sound like you're declaring war on his goat. He sets your tent on fire with a glare and a torch. The Byzantines call you a barbarian. Your priest calls them heretics. You're stuck in the middle, nodding politely while both sides mutter curses. Then there are the local Christians, Arabs, Armenians, Syriacs, who you thought were on your side. Turns out, they're as confused by your red cross as you are by their chants. You threaten a group of monks by mistake, thinking they're enemies, and now your surcoat's got singe marks to match its stains. It gets worse. The Muslims you're supposed to fight? They're not a monolith, either. Fatimids, Seljuks, and local warlords swap sides faster than Gerald swaps stories about his pitchfork's divine powers. One day, you're chasing a guy. The next, he's at your campfire, eating your last onion and explaining geopolitics like it's his job. Your commander calls a meeting to unite the factions, but it's a shouting match over whose saint has better miracles. Gerald suggests a duel to settle it, and for once, nobody disagrees. You're just trying to eat your mystery stew without starting a holy war within your own camp. You clutch your frying pan, wondering if it could double as a peace offering. The stars above Constantinople twinkle, but they're not aligning for unity. You lie in the grass, the city's walls looming like a judgmental parent. Gerald snoring, dreaming of duels, or maybe just bacon. You're starting to think the real crusade is surviving your allies' egos, and you're not sure your splinter relic's holy enough for that. You're still trudging through the endless muck, your chainmail a clanking testament to poor life choices, and the Holy Land feels like a rumor spread by overly optimistic priests. By now, you've realized your fellow crusaders aren't the noble knights of tavern tales. They're a bizarre mix of fanatics, misfits, and Gerald, who's still shirtless and now painting crosses on his chest with soot. Your army's less a holy legion and more a traveling circus of chaos. The canonical event here is the motley composition of the First Crusade's armies in 1097, where peasants, zealots, and opportunists formed a disorganized mob that somehow kept marching. Historians still debate whether their diversity was a strength or a recipe for disaster, but you're too busy dodging a baker's rolling pin to care. An odd detail? Some crusaders carried makeshift weapons like soup ladles or gardening tools, believing divine favor trumped actual steel. To your left, a toothless baker swings a rolling pin like it's Excalibur. To your right, a guy named Tebold, who claims he's a monk but swears like a sailor, wields a jug and a dagger he found in a brawl. Gerald's pitchfork now has a new motto: God's muscle. Your commander's a 19-year-old noble with more hair than strategy, charging into cabbage fields, and calling it tactics. Then there's the fanatics, wading into battle with nothing but sticks and blind faith, shouting, Deus Volt, like it's a shield. Their survival rate's so low, you're starting to think God's got a different plan for them. A merchant trails the army, selling relics, a twig he calls St. Peter's thumb, a rock that's supposedly holy gravel. You stick with your splinter relic, though you're not sure it's doing anything but poking holes in your pack. A band of kids, nobody knows where they came from, march with better morale than you, singing hymns while you're just trying not to trip over Tybalt's jug. At night, the camp's a mess of arguments, bad singing, and a self-proclaimed bishop of the tents preaching from a barrel. His theology's shaky, his balance worse. Gerald tries to barter his holy water for a loaf, nearly starting a riot. You clutch your frying pan, wondering if it could knock some sense into this crew. You lie in the grass, the stars above mocking your exhaustion. The Crusade's supposed to be about salvation, but it feels like a war against common sense. Gerald's snoring, Tybalt's cursing, and the kids are still singing. You're not sure who's crazier, your enemies, or the guy next to you sharpening a ladle like it's a sword. One thing's clear, you're not in good company, just weird company, and weird company's all you've got. You're still hauling your battered body through the dust and despair. Your chainmail a rusty reminder that faith doesn't stop blisters. After weeks of mud, hunger, and Gerald's increasingly unhinged pitchfork mottos, you've reached a city with walls so tall they mock your entire existence. The order comes down, lay siege. It sounds epic, like the stories of knights storming fortresses, but in reality, it's just medieval camping, with worse food and more arrows. The canonical event here is the Siege of Nicaea in 1097, where the First Crusades' ragtag army surrounded a Seljuk stronghold, enduring weeks of boredom, starvation, and bad planning before Byzantine allies helped secure victory. Historians still debate whether the Crusaders' persistence or Byzantine diplomacy won the day, but you're too busy digging a trench to care. An odd detail? Some Crusaders tried to build siege engines from scavenged wood, only for them to collapse faster than Gerald's attempts at Latin. Your army sets up camp just out of arrow range barely and settles in for what feels like eternity. You've got no food, no sanitation, and a catapult that fell apart before lunch. The defenders, meanwhile, are eating olives and waving from the walls like they're on holiday. Your tent leaks, your stew tastes like rope and regret, and Gerald's caught a rat he's named Dinner. The smell's a nightmare. Unwashed bodies, rotting scraps, and a dead horse that's starting to feel like a metaphor for your morale. Someone tries to play a lute at night. It sounds like a goat drowning in wine, and you're tempted to use your frying pan as a mute button. You dig trenches, build wobbly towers, and complain louder than the priests shouting Deus Volt. Arrows rain down, and your ladder, climbing skills, are as bad as your navigation. You climb 2 rungs, scream, and fall onto a guy who was already surrendering. The siege drags on weeks of mud, hunger, and Gerald trying to barter his rat for a loaf. At one point, someone suggests eating the camp's mascot goat. Sparking a fistfight, the goat wins. You're starting to think sieges aren't about glory. They're about surviving boredom and the stench of your own socks. You clutch your splinter relic, praying for a miracle, like a dry bed or a commander who knows what a catapult is. Night falls, and you're lying in a ditch, the city's walls looming like a taunt. Gerald snoring, the loot guys still at it, and you're dreaming of a siege that ends with food instead of more mud. The stars above are indifferent, and your frying pan's the only thing keeping you grounded. Jerusalem's out there somewhere, but right now, you'd settle for a bath and a stew that doesn't taste like betrayal. You're still camped outside those towering city walls. Your chainmail a soggy, rusted torment, and the siege has turned your faith into a faint flicker. Then one morning, the sun rises with a little extra drama, and a sound cuts through the camp's usual groans. The city gates creak open. Whether it's starvation, sabotage, or some divine scheduling, you don't care you're storming in. The canonical event here is the chaotic capture of Jerusalem in 1099 during the First Crusade, when crusaders breached the city after a brutal siege, unleashing a frenzy of looting and violence. Historians still debate whether the sack was driven by religious zeal or just pent-up chaos, but you're too busy tripping over rubble to think about it. It's not a glorious charge. It's a stampede of sweaty, half-mad crusaders wielding kitchen knives and bad decisions. You rush forward, heart pounding, your frying pan raised like it's got a personal grudge. You immediately trip on a broken stone, and someone steps on your back. You thank them out of habit. An odd detail, some crusaders grabbed anything shiny during the sack, including candlesticks they mistook for relics. You snatch a goblet and a tapestry you can't carry, plus a very confused cat. That's now your responsibility. Inside, it's smoke, screams, and chaos. A knight gallops past with a chandelier. Gerald's found a barrel of wine and declared himself Lord of the Alleyway. You swing your knife at a door that won't budge, because apparently doors are your real enemy. There's no chain of command anymore. Your noble commanders posing for imaginary paintings. Priests are shoving relics into their robes while shouting, Deus Vult, and someone claims the Holy Grail's a dented soup bowl. You're not sure if this is a holy war or a holy yard sale gone wrong. The city's secured, meaning it's smoldering and looted, and you stand in the rubble, clutching a toe bone you hope is holy, but might just be chicken. Victory feels weird, less righteous, and more like you're sticky, tired, and vaguely guilty. Civilians are crying, doors are broken, and Gerald's vomiting on a relic, which sums up the vibe. You expected salvation, you got ash, and a cat that hates you. You sit on a cracked step, the goblet in your hand feeling heavier than your chainmail. The stars above Jerusalem twinkle, but they're not celebrating. You're alive, somehow. But the line between glory and plunder's blurred into dust. Your splinter, relics still there, poking through your pack like a reminder of every bad choice that got you here. You're sitting on a broken crate in the smoldering ruins of Jerusalem. Your chainmail, a dented, rusty relic of a journey you barely understand anymore. The city's won, but victory tastes like ash and sounds like Gerald retching behind a crumbled wall. You've survived starvation, sieges, arrows, and that one time you mistook a bishop's hat for a stew pot. But now, as the dust settles, you're not sure what you've gained besides a goblet, a tapestry you can't carry, and that cat who's glaring at you like you owe it an apology. The canonical event here is the aftermath of the First Crusade's capture of Jerusalem in 1099, a moment of triumph marred by looting, slaughter, and questions of purpose that haunted survivors. Historians still debate whether the Crusaders saw themselves as liberators or conquerors, but you're too tired to care. You're just glad to be breathing. An odd detail? Some Crusaders carved crosses into the city's stones, claiming it marked their victory, only to realize later they'd defaced a church. You've got your splinter relic, still poking through your pack, and you're starting to think it's the only thing keeping you sane. Your body's changed thinner, dirtier, with a twitch in your eye every time someone says pilgrimage. Your armor doesn't fit right anymore. It's molded to your bruises, not your shoulders. Back home, they'll call you a hero, ask for tales of glory. You'll smile, say incredible, because chaotic, damp, and morally confusing doesn't fit the tavern narrative. You'll polish that goblet, mount it on a wall, and nod solemnly during sermons, but you'll avoid goats they know too much. The crusade was supposed to be about salvation, but it feels like you survived a disaster with a cross slapped on it. Gerald's writing poetry now, terrible stuff about pitchforks and divine bacon. Someone's starting a cult around that dented soup bowl grail. You're planning to donate to a monastery and never mention the time you bartered your last onion for a sip of plague water. Was it worth it? History says yes. Your eye twitch says no. You're alive, but your faith's complicated, your sword's nicked, and your cat's plotting mutiny. The Holy Land's behind you, but so's most of your sanity. You lie back on the crate, the stars above Jerusalem flickering like they're unsure of the story too. Your frying pan's still there, dented but loyal, a better friend than Gerald. You're not the same person who left that village, clutching a wooden cross and a sermon's promise. You're older, wearier, and a little less sure God's keeping score. The air grows quiet now, the city's chaos fading into a soft hum, like the world's holding its breath. You close your eyes, and the weight of your journey, mud, hunger, battles, that cursed stew slips away, blurring into a gentle haze. The stars soften, their edges melting into the night, and your splinter relic feels lighter, like it's finally forgiven you. You're not a hero, not a conqueror, just a soul who walked through fire and came out singed but standing. The Holy Land story will be told in songs and scrolls, but yours lives in the ache of your bones, the dent in your pan, the cat curled grudgingly at your side. Let the world spin on without you for a while. Sleep now under the endless sky where Jerusalem's dust and dreams settle into silence.